let's get to the reason why we're here. The real reason why we're here, y'all. Tonight, we're thrilled to have the one and only Brontez Purnell back in the house, our virtual house, but it's still a house. It's still a house. Broadcasting live from City Lights Books. So Brontez Purnell's 100 Boyfriends, mi gente. Do a little jazz hands for this, just a little bit. Come on, move them hands around. Let me know how happy you are to hear this. Because not only is Brontez tonight here with us, we're also going to have him in conversation with the one and only Melissa Broder. So I know you're all in for a treat. You know what I'm going to do? In case you don't know, I'm going to read quick bios, and then we're going to let these two beautiful folks get to it. So in case you don't know, let me just hip you to this. Brontez Purnell is a writer, musician, dancer, filmmaker, and performance artist. All those things. They are the author of a graphic novel, a novela, a children's book, and the novel Since I Lay My Burden Down. Recipient of a 2018 Wheating Writers Award for Fiction. Brontez was named one of the 32 Black male writers of our time by the New York Times Style magazine in 2018. Brontez is also the frontman for the band The Younger Lovers, the co-founder of the experimental dance group, the Brontez Purnell Dance Company, the creator of the renowned cult zine Fag School, and the director of several short films, music videos, and the documentary Unstoppable Feet, The Dances of Ed Mock. Híjole. Born in Triana, Alabama, Brontez now resides over here in the East Bay, Oakland, Califas. Yeah, and he is joined by his very good amiga. Want to be with him tonight. Melissa Broder is the author of the novels Milk Fed and The Pisces, the essay collection So Sad Today, and 5 poetry collections. Man, these people don't sleep. Including Super Doom, Selected Poems, Summer of 2021 coming at you, and Last Sext. Broder is written for the New York Times, El Doc, Vice, Vogue Italia, and the New York magazine's The Cut. Her poems appear in Poetry, the Iowa Review, Guernica Fence, a bunch of others. She's the winner of a Pushcart Prize for Poetry, y'all. Oh man, this is gonna be so beautiful. And beautiful people, we're going to have a Q&A at the end of all of this. So do me a favor, put your spicy, juicy questions. Brontez said he wants them as spicy as they can be. Put them in the chat, and then at the end, we'll be relaying them to our beautiful people tonight, okay? And also, don't forget, we're going to be posting the links to the 100 Boyfriends in the chat. So if you haven't gotten this book, get it. Get it now. Get 2, get 3, get 4. Without further ado, let me just read my beloved Pancakes fellow book slingers description of 100 Boyfriends. 100 Boyfriends, a horny Valentine. It's like an angel in a bathhouse sign. A good lover is hard to find, but less preposterous with the written words of wisdom for this Brontez's Purnell's luscious defiance. So without further ado, y'all, por favorcito, give it all the love to Brontez Purnell and Melissa Broder.
All right. So we're going to both read to you a little bit from 100 Boyfriends. I think Brontez is going to go first, right? And then I'm going to ask Brontez some questions, and then we'll open it up. So, yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to go with kind of the last story that appears in the collection. It's called Do They Exist If No One's Watching? All right. It's like my favorite saying, where God closes a door, he opens a window. But in this particular case, the window was on the 5th floor and the house was on fire. The man to my right, he looks like he is ready to jump from a burning building. I sit listening to this awkward couple next to me as I wait for a friend at a Burmese place on Telegraph Avenue. I like listening to other people's conversations the same way I like looking at the text messages of friends who leave their phones unlocked. I lurk so hard I almost get whiplash. I lurk so hard I should wear a cape and fangs. I lurk so hard, you get the picture. I am often convinced that I care more about these conversations than the participants themselves do. In the case of the burning building jumper man next to me, I know for a fact this is true. This man is on a date, a very awkward date, with a boy that is too young for him. The man looks 50, or maybe he's just in his 30s and had a hard life. The younger man looks like he's fucking 12, but he has to be at least 21 because he's drinking a mason jar full of some cocktail. He's lit as fuck. He's red in the face and gesticulating through his speech intensely. My dinner partner, my dinner, par- my dinner partner is 30 minutes late. I have heard the man say absolutely nothing while this boy stammers on about how his younger brother can't find the right college. In fact, refuses to find the right college, and how it's making the boy's white ass mom sad, like super sad, like so sad she had to get the boy's younger brother a trip to Yosemite for the weekend to clear his head. The older man looks as if he wishes to God this entire interaction had just been a blowjob, but I can't imagine how one would get a dick in this young man's mouth. He talks too fucking much. Me of all people to judge. Anyway, back when I was a young and easily corruptible homosexual, all the daddies loved me because I knew how to shut the fuck up and take some dick. An older guy would take me to dinner and I would study him like a cat watching an object it was at any moment about to pounce, i.e., this pussy kills. I would answer every question but keep content to a minimum. I'm studying art, I would respond, or I graduate the year after next, or I was quoted by the New York Times, just enough to let him know that they were about to stick their dick in a young man who had a self worth and a locatable dignity, even though I have to say I wasn't altogether interested in those things. The dignity, that is. My good boy routine was for the daddy's relief, not mine. I just wanted to get fucked good. Winning the older gentleman's respect, that was for his peace of mind. And then I would sucker punch him. Right as dinner was over and he signed the check, I would stretch and yawn and casually say to my host in one breath, "You know, sir, I would let you come in me." Now, most of the men would be immediately disgusted. They'd give me a look of disapproval and I would never see them again. But that was well and fine because they were exactly the ones I wanted to weed out. It was the daddies whose heart you could see skip a beat and a look of exactitude would crawl across their faces. Really, they would say. Standing up quickly, paying the check. These daddies would take me home, bend me in half like a pretzel, fuck me so hard I forgot the person I was before they fucked me. But back to the dinner itself. During the dinner, when the daddy would be sizing me up, I had the dual occupation of being present enough for him to assess, but also being able to sink into the background enough so as not to take up too much space at the table. I had to treat myself like I was something on the menu he had ordered, like I was on the menu, and then a goddamn joint lit in my head. I was forgetting something. I had to stop all this thinking and go back. Horny daddies. I'm on the menu. Food. Where is my food? Like, I'm at a restaurant. I should be eating food. I'm looking at the waitress and she is motioning as if to say, 1 second, please. And I look at the couple that I had just ripped apart for no reason. And I think I am being this level of bitch because my sugar is goddamn dropping. I don't know why I got so addicted to the narrative of these men. I need not notice them at all. It's kind of like that tree falling in the woods question. Do they exist if no one's watching? I think not, yet still, I can't help but want some kind of restorative justice blowjob for the victim of this date, and truthfully, one for myself. Earlier that day, my newest HIV counselor saw my chart and noticed I had contracted syphilis 3 times in 1 year. She was an older, gray haired, straight woman. She hugged me and asked, "Have you ever considered having a boyfriend?" And then I started crying, like really, really loud, ugly crying. I had to catch my breath at times. I was crying so hard, crying. Not out of sadness or loneliness, but out of sheer exhaustion. I was just cocaine hungover and cranky, to be honest, but the echo chamber of the STD clinic was feeling like a coffin I had been submerged in, one I kept re-emerging from like a tomb. I was my own personal Jesus. I cried so hard that she referred me to a mental health counselor, who then referred me to HR, who then informed me that I should have the first counselor fired for triggering me so hard. The thought of swift justice filled me with an immediate sense of purpose that faded in all of 10 seconds. One thing I can truly say about myself is that I am too goddamn sketched to lead a moral campaign against virtually anybody. Also, leading a moral campaign against anything just seemed like a lot of work, and I was high. Still, I remember her hugging me when I was upset and how nice it felt, like someone actually fucking cared. No one I was fucking cared for me or hugged me. So in the end, really, I was a hit dog hollering. It all had struck a nerve. The waitress comes back with 3 different fried items, coconut rice, and a hot tea. And I'm sitting there looking at the color palette of the food. And for what I am sure are very specific reasons, I'm thinking about that Frida Kahlo painting where like she's in the tub and like seeing these visions from her life or whatever. I'm thinking of this as I see the food, but it's not as poetic, beautiful, or eloquent as it sounds. In fact, what I see isn't even a vision, but rather a scene jackhammering its way into my brain, one I can see even when I close my goddamn eyes. I think back to the interaction with the HIV counselor and the linger of the hug, the humanness, the warmth, the depth, and then my mind falls a little further to the smell of the old lady herself, and then me kind of wishing she had a dick and had instead been a creepy old doctor dude who had tried to finger me. I know it's bad to think, but it's okay to think as long as you don't say it out loud. So I keep to myself and don't blurt out, I am having a fantasy about painting a different gender on my HIV counselor and having them sexually assault me to the people on my right who are having a terrible date. I also play the scene in my head of me picturing myself as a for real shady bitch and actually going to human resources and trying to explain all of this. But if I had to think about it, what's really getting my goat about the situation isn't the fact that the doctor didn't finger me. It's more that she emotionally fingered me. She emotionally fingered me without my consent. My dick is hard and I stare at the restaurant. No one here cares that my dick is hard. I don't care that my dick is hard. I go back to just being stoned and hungry. I go full force into all the food. I'm eating so fast, I can't even really taste what I'm eating. I'm literally just letting the shit slide down my throat. The couple next to me grabs the check and leaves, and with no one left to watch, I find I have a strange sense of aloneness. The person I'm waiting for is clearly not coming at this point, but I sink inside myself and remember that I am not alone. I am in a restaurant full of people.
Thank you. That was amazing. Okay, I'm gonna read a shorter piece from the earlier in the book called, so there's various boyfriends in the book. There's also various, like, I don't know, what I loved about this book was, well, many things, but one thing that I love about this book is that there's relationships where it's like, is that really a boyfriend? Like Cortez the bully, or of one of the characters' youths, like a childhood bully and a childhood first friend who are, in a way, boyfriends. And so many of the people in the stories who aren't like technically boyfriend or technically someone who has fucked or been fucked are still boyfriends. But this is an official one. This is boyfriend number 666. And this is the Satanist. I had out-trolled myself once again. I wanted trench coat mafia dick. So I started putting out dating ads looking for adult players of Magic, the Gathering, and Dungeons and Dragons. I was curious to see what would come from the net I had cast, and the answer would be standing in front of me sooner rather than later. I got a late night text from a gentleman caller who said he was a 9th level warlock and that he could teach me both the fantasy games and blow my back out. I got to his house and was literally so not prepared. Like I thought I was, but that fool was on his 9th level warlock swag so hard. Before me stood a grown-ass man with surgically implanted fangs, a cape, red contact lenses, and an inverted pentagram tattoo on his forehead. The tattoo distracted from his gentle features. He really was a pretty guy, though he fucked in this ugly way. He asked me about my own inverted pentagram tattoo, and I was like, oh, well, really, I'm a romantic Satanist. I believe in Satan as an allegory and as a literary vehicle, and really his being a story of anarchy and patriarchal defiance. Silence, poser, he said, and advanced on me. Before I could realize that I had not fully consented to it, I was naked with a belt around my neck and being choked to the gods. He made me repeat, fuck God, hail Satan, over and over again. He was also like, you are just an F-word hole for Satan's sons, to which I rolled my eyes. If this was Satan's best sex warrior, it stood to reason why Satanism in general was such a PR nightmare. His stroke game was at about 58%. And considering how much plot was involved, I still felt that instead of fucking him, I should have just eaten a cheeseburger or goofed around on the internet. He had a box of condoms with inverted pentagram insignia on them because apparently Satanists have their own brand of condoms. Condoms by nature seemed like such a lawful thing. Why would a thrall to the Dark Lord even bother? But I said nothing and let him fuck me despite my mild latex allergy. He came in 3 minutes and then showed me how to play Magic: The Gathering as promised. And though I never fucked him again, I still to this day meet him every other Wednesday to play the game. So, all right. So, well, actually, I have a really quick question about that story, and then I'll go into my prepared questions. So why is it that the speaker in this story, the narrator, and some of us humans, despite a latex allergy, might just be like, you know what, and just let it go? What is that? What do you think that is?
People, I don't know what we witness in society this day, and I think it's good is this radical other side of consent where anything beyond enthusiastic consent is assault or worse. But then there's so many of us that's just kind of I don't feel like giving enthusiastic consent about everything. If something's
Oh, wait, we lost you, Brontez. Hold on. We lost you at enthusiastic consent, the second one.
He was telling so much truth, he froze.
I know.
We're going to give it a minute, people. It's the Zoom Mundo thing, but he gonna
Hey,
come right back.
Brontez, why don't you exit out and come back in again? I think that might help. Let's try that.
Doesn't he look good frozen? Most people, when they freeze, they got weird closed eyes or weird smeariness. Brontez, he's so cute.
So cute.
Man. Yeah, he'll be right back.
Hey, Melissa, why don't you read another one while he's on his way back in?
Okay, I'm waiting with suspended animation here. All right, I'll read some shorties. These are just some quick boyfriend bursts. Where's the chef? All right. Boyfriend number 77, the chef. He invited me to his headquarters. He cooked for the kings and queens of art, making expensive vegan shit inspired by 90s rock musicians. He explained to me what my feelings were, often. Oh my God, he was everything I couldn't have, but the second I did have him, I knew I didn't want it anymore. It was like wanting a shot of whiskey and letting it sit on the bar in front of you for entire minutes, mouth-watering. It wasn't about the whiskey per se, but more about letting the anticipation build. Sooner rather than later, I was knocking back shots of him like a fucking prize fighter.
Can y'all hear me now? Okay,
Yeah,
I don't know what my internet sucks.
We were on latex.
The what? The mild latex allergy?
Yeah, and enthusiastic consent versus moderate consent.
I'm saying. I think when you've just like, I don't know, when you grew up in a bathhouse and you've had as much sex as I can, even when I'm really, really into it, I can't even like garner enthusiastic consent. I'm just kind of like, I've had some dick before, it's fine. Like, like, so, it's hard. Plus, sometimes you're just too interested. You're like, actually, where is this story gonna go? I mean, he went through the trouble of tattooing a pentagram on his head. Like, fuck, like, how bad could it be? So,
Fabulous. Okay. No, I hear that. Yeah, no, I don't even know if I have enthusiastic consent with myself. So it's hard to muster that for another person for sure. So, all right. So to get to my prepared questions for you, just a couple of them. So, all right. So 100 boyfriends. It's everything I look for in a book. It's full of lust and longing, heart, humor, and some magic. The Gathering. It's a fucking pleasure to read. It's sad in parts. It's deeply human and it's horny. Did you experience pleasure writing this book? Was it a pleasurable experience, or were there moments of pleasure in writing?
It was lots of pleasure. So, okay, like, it's funny that I'm doing this for City Lights because originally this was supposed to be like a prose poem book that I was gonna deliver to City Lights because I was like, oh, I've lived here long enough. It's about time I cement myself as a beatnik superhero, as I always have wanted to. But originally the section's called The Boyfriends, right? I had done this this performance artist dance piece called Bombs Uber California, and the text from The Boyfriends was like text on the wall originally. And so I was like, I sat with that text for about a year or two, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this, I want to turn this into something. But in the midst of that, I won the Whiting, and then this other stuff happened, and then Jackson from MCD FSG like called up and was like, hey, are you working on anything new? And I had a couple of short stories, but mostly was trying to turn that into like a large poetry volume. And he was like, actually, I like this, but let's like kind of move it this way. And so over the years, it kind of like morphed or whatever. But
yeah, that was what I was going to ask you actually. Like, was it written as a set of pieces with an overarching vision of like boyfriends unity? Like always, like when did you become intent to make it a whole book? Or were the pieces sort of like written separately over the years, and then you were like, oh, there's a thematic connection? But I guess it seems like the former, like there were some, and then then the book began to take shape.
yeah, it took more shape, like say like, oh gosh, like a third of the way into the project, that's when it took shape. And plus also, I had been doing this film series called 100 Boyfriends Mixtape, which is like this visual zine diary thing that I do anyway. And so I'd always been playing with like text around this theme. And so yeah, it kind of gelled all like in that way. So I finally like it just seemed more appropriate to like finally have a novel to like match all this writing that kind of synced up with it. Plus I like 100 Boyfriends too because it's like, there was my first book, Johnny, Would You Love Me If My Dick Were Bigger? That was like a set of essays or whatever. And since I like my burn down was this novel, and I was really excited to return to the short story form just because it's like short stories are my favorite. They just are, And so I felt like it was a way to just kind of like the voice for Johnny, but like, Johnny's the type of book you can only get away with writing like in your 20s. And so after you've had time to reflect and like some things have settled down, like I kind of like this voice or whatever. Like the voice in Boyfriends is definitely, I think, like that first voice, but like way more distilled.
Well, I definitely read this book as like autofiction, like particularly when the narrative was first person. But then like sometimes the work vacillates into third person, right? Like it's sort of, which is cool. And what I thought was so unique, one of the unique things about this book. And it sort of like turns the expectation of like, well, what is true or derived from Brontez's life on its head? It's like, as a reader, like I don't really need to know that, right? Like there's that blurring of lines, like in the hookers section, for example. I love the way like the tenses vacillate. Like you do first person, then there's the next chunk with the third person, then back to the first person. How did you decide when to employ like first and when to do it more as like a third person short story?
I don't think there was ever really a decision. Some stories just came out that way. Did you ever read that book? Everyone always asks about like first and third, but did you ever read that Grace Paley book Later That Same Day?
Mhm.
Yeah, I read that when I was 24, and like she did that all the time, you know, and I was like, oh, like that's definitely like a like tool. And so, you know, and plus, yeah, like I don't know, these stories range from everything to what I'm thinking to gay boys to actually a lot of straight women I know. So it's like, and queer women or whatever, like the whole zodiac of who has to deal with men, right, is like filtering in into the spirit, like kind of this book. So I was never like concerned, but it does always bring up this question because some people will really weaponize it in the interview of like, well, how much of this is true, and plus I'm just like, I don't have to answer that at all, actually. So
But I mean, I think like all, or not all, but many readers, were like salacious, gossipy humans. And it's like, there's that feeling of like, you want to know, right? Like you're reading and you're like, you want to know, even if you're like a writer who like hates when people think that about, like ask that question, you still want to know. But so then whenever the third person came in, I was like, why do you want to know? You don't need to want to know that. There was like a meta, I don't know, I felt that as the reader, I was kind of talking to myself. Like there was like a shaming. There was like a wanting to know, and then there was a shaming of the wanting to know. But that might just be my own nature and not have anything to do with the third person.
no, it's totally fine, but it's also the question of whose writing has to be memoir in order for it to be authentic and received well, and who can just actually write whatever they want. Like I was shady and named names, but there's a total like canon of like really straight fucking white people who write about anybody they goddamn feel like. No one ever asked them, where's this story coming from? Oh, you're writing about a whole different race, or you're writing about like a racial perspective you have no fucking clue about and never been in. But like these folks make 6-figure deals, right? I can have sometimes what I think are really deep or either very pedantic observations just about relationships, like the vast relationships of people. But unless it's something that actually happened to me, my word is like flat or doesn't mean nothing. That can't be right. And like it also like that's exactly what they do to like marginalized writers. Like we have to be writing memoir, because essentially only like straight white men are smart enough to write fiction. It's a very like crazy distinction we have to make. Like, like when we're like, like not saying you're doing this because I know, but it's like there are people like who really don't ever like kind of catch that. And so it does become a political question of like, well, how much is this is true and who is allowed to write what if something is not true? You know what I'm saying? Like, but I feel like 100 Boyfriends, I don't know, it really isn't like my story. Like it's really all of our stories, So I kind of generate from that. And plus also when people ever guess what's actually true and what's not, they always get it wrong anyway. So there's always this thing of like, fact is always stranger than fiction. The shit that actually like happened, people think is fiction. The shit you could totally make up, people will hold to as the honest to God truth. Also so nice to watch too. It's so funny.
So sort of in keeping with that idea of like the book as something that can take on its own life, right? That it can be something that exists and we don't have to know about the relationship to the speaker. So in the piece Boyfriend 99.5%, there's a dreamer boyfriend, and the dreamer describes the book as something that lasts forever, like a piece of literature, something that lasts forever. And I was wondering if you think there's something eternal about every boy that we have ever loved or fucked well, even after the moment is over. And I'm wondering, do you think that there's anything about writing that can lend eternality to an extinct moment?
Yeah, and then plus, I mean, but we wear these things in our body all the time, right? And like sometimes I like every boyfriend, every new person or whatever that comes into my life, if I really think about it, I can connect them to someone that I met before. Or I can be like, oh, I've been in this like situation before. This person reminds me of the first person that did this with or that with, you know, like we're always kind of what's the word? We're always kind of returning to that first person we remember, or those first like experiences, or those first pleasurable experiences, or those first horrible experiences that sometimes we need to create, you know. So I feel like you know, people, it's like a map of like how these things kind of, you know, echo through our consciousness, or whatever. Oh, look at the baby. Like how these
This is
things
Pickle.
hello, oh my god. Do you ever think that like all the other animals in the animal kingdom look at dogs like, you know, like the Uncle Tom of the animal kingdom, like zebras and lions are like, yo, why you get to live in the house? Like, what's up with that? Like, sorry.
I think some of them are jealous and some of them are like, little bitch, you know,
Yeah,
and maybe there's a hybrid too.
they essentially see dogs as just like, you know, humans. They're just like, fuck you.
They've capitulated. They've like, yeah, for sure.
No, yeah.
No, I've got squirrels out there who like are running like circles around this dog and like, you know, he's a joke to them. So I think, and part of that's probably his domestic nature. So yes.
I think, I mean, maybe he thinks it's worth it. Obviously, he don't give a fuck what them zebras and squirrels think. He's in the house. Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I think that there's no way that like people don't always kind of leave an imprint or a sketch on us. You know, the ones we have the most repetitive experiences with. So I do believe that we constantly try to find ways to relive these things we've had before.
And also, I mean, maybe that, I wonder if that like starts with, you know, like mommy and or daddy. You know, that
I'm glad you asked that question, because my last 3 therapists really just want to sit there and like talk about my parents all the time. That said, I've tried to telescope back too, because I'm just like, I would hope that like some of my fucked upness sits somewhere outside of my parents. Though this quarantine, I have sat here and found new ways to blame them for things I never thought I could, and that's always cathartic. Like, so I can map probably about 10 to 15 things that I can blame my parents for. But now as I get older and older and that list grows past like problem 15, the rest of that shit is definitely me. So
yeah, it's like, is there, I guess there's like, at some point it's yours, right? Like no matter who gave it to you, like it's you, you're carrying it, it's yours now.
Get to shoveling. So exactly, totally.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So one thing I love about your work is that I feel like I'm on a journey with the speaker. And often like we're on this mischievous journey together. And there's a lot of humor, but I don't feel like tricks are being pulled or like points are being proved. And I was wondering how you view your relationship to the reader, like friend, teacher, Cupid, lover, God, like a hybrid, you know, different things at different times.
I always feel like I'm writing as if like I'm sitting like in my court, like it, I don't know, like I feel like a journey with a reader should feel like your best girlfriend who you're like running through the Castro trying to score cocaine with, who's like, you know, privy to all the inside jokes and like the, you know, like, and y'all are about to go do something mischievous together, but it's everything that happens before you hit the club. Or like just like the council of fucking like fags and queers I know when we're like sitting around like really dishing tea. Do you know what I mean? Like there's kind of like, there's so many confessional voices, but of course, like, I don't know, I think I've always leaned toward that kind of jazzy, that more jazzy voice. Like, did you ever read Billie Holiday's Lady Sings the Blues?
Mm-mm.
Like, okay, so like that I think is actually one of the most like crazy like rock and roll fucking like diaries that like ever existed, because it's like she's on her deathbed, I think, like she's like heroin fucking time is kicked in and she's really spitting the tea about the life. She was like, oh, you want to know what it's like to be the fucking first fucking jazz bitch black singer in America who writes her own songs? honey. You know what I mean? Like there isn't this waspish restraint that we find in writing all the time that's supposed to signify, you know, we are God or whatever. Like that, you know, she really spits the facts, which I think is actually closer to how our brains like kind of like intuit things is that we are happening. So that's one of like 30 million influences I have, but I always reference that book because I read it in my 20s and it kind of really changed my life.
So was there ever a time, because I know, was there ever a time when you thought you might have to make a choice between like music, dance, writing? Like, and when did you start writing?
I started writing zines when I was like a teenager, like so probably like well, I mean, I've always really written. My mom was really into writing. My mom was like really into poetry and just like the whole canon of like the niggerati and just like all this like stuff. She made me read like Native Son when I was like in 6th grade, which I don't think you should do in 6th grade. But also I think my entire life there was this theme of older people handing me literature that I probably should not have had just yet. Not because I think it was like wrong or whatever, but the themes of it was crazy. Like I had this teacher in 6th grade who I guess she was just like, oh, this is a little gay boy. Let me give him Sylvia Plath. She gave me like the bell jar and Ariel. And I was like reading the bell jar probably about 2 years ago. And I was like, no one should have handed me this in 6th grade. See, I blame that more than my parents for the conundrum of me. But I I forgot the question. Wait, what?
Oh, well, the other question was just like, did you ever feel like there was a time you might have to like make a choice between music, dance, and
Oh,
writing?
I'm so nailed to all of these goddamn things at once. And also when people are
And
saying
film.
multidisciplinary artists, you know, like it's some sacred holy thing. They say Renaissance person all the time. I promise you it's based in nothing but the gig economy and who is allowed to just have one job these days? Seriously. So it's like I would love to just sit in a goddamn room and be the next Danielle Steele and just, you know, churn out 1,000 fucking page novels from here to kingdom come, but ain't gonna really work like that, and ain't nobody gonna pay me to do that. So shit, I gotta get my fat ass up and fucking get on camera, dance, sing, you know, fucking do some songs, you know, produce the movie, get the PhD, you know what I mean? Like it's fucking it can get active over here. But I think ultimately, I think engaging in kind of like the physical realms of like dance and all this other stuff just always comes back and makes my writing better. So
And it's interesting that this book started as like it was going in the direction of the performance project, and then it moved into, or no, you said you have a performance project that is sort of that runs. But where can we find that?
just I think I have some live versions of it. It's actually at the like it's Bombs Uber California, and I think it's live at the Wattis. It's on YouTube. But yeah, like 100 Boyfriends essentially started as a dance project.
Cool. What do you think about content warnings?
I feel like there aren't enough of them, honestly. Like, I'd love them if they slapped them on the plane, bottles of water, fucking people, the news, you know, like, and like, I like, it's so funny when I see people like trigger warning and stuff, and I'm just like, do you understand how much shit actually triggers me? Like, in one day, like, this trigger warning is triggering me. So, um, the idea, I don't know. I think it's funny. I think it's awesome. I think it like anything, it can go too far. But also this idea that we are somehow gonna like protect people from the world, this sentiment can go too far. So I think it's funny. I like it's like any good gesture that goes too far, or it becomes this kind of like defensive architecture, right? Of like, you know, it kind of gentrifies our interactions too in this way, or it
Mhm.
makes us believe that there's only one correct way or safe way to interact. I just think humans will always prove you wrong once we get into the realm of this is how you behave and this is the only way to behave. There's always some way, there's always something else that's like coming. So I did put a parental advisory on my first book just because I thought it was funny. Plus, it's like, who amongst us didn't grow up with that parental advisory? But it's also kind of like when you go to Pornhub and they like, "Are you 18?" And you're just like, "Yeah." You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, whose benefit is this for? I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a really good question of, like what deserves a content warning and what doesn't.
Let me tell you something too, because there was that movie Gretel and Hansel, right?
And see.
It was like that movie. It was the movie about the Grimm tale, about those like kids that have to fight a witch. There's some point in the movie where the little boy and the girl are stuck in the woods and they come up on some magic mushrooms, right? And like, I remember this weird stiff looking dad in the movie theater, he had his 7-year-old kid and his wife there, and I remember that part of the movie comes up and he just leaves very indignantly, and he's just like, how could they ever show this in a movie, kids tripping out on mushrooms in the 1640 woods of Germany? And part of me, it was like, see, this is what I think content warnings are for, is actually for stupid fucking people. Like, who of us did not grow up knowing that the Grimm tales were never meant for children, right? But and think of he's protecting his kid in a world where that kid can go on the internet, on their damn phone, find whatever, fist and piss and crazy. Kids can do some crazy shit that we used to have to sneak into our parents' room to do, right? But the idea that, this is what draws the line for him, So I think it's I don't know. I just think it's really it's funny. I don't know. I never feel quite protected enough. So
Yeah, in our day we didn't have Pornhub. We had to write our own. Growing up, we had to carve it out of wood. So I want to ask you one more question, and then I think we'll go to audience questions. We'll turn it over. So and this is so. How many chambers do you think that your heart has, and how many boyfriends do you think a person might be able to hold in there at the same time? Do you think that some boyfriends have to move out before others can move in? Is there infinite space? I don't know. Any thoughts on chambers of the heart and loving simultaneously, or because there's in this ecosystem, and especially because we don't know who is drawn from life, who is drawn straight from the mind, who is a hybrid in this text, there's room for 100 boyfriends. So, and it's kind of and there's love in here. There's love for many of them. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about simultaneous love or loves existing at the same time.
Well, so the whole theme of 100 boyfriends is about both the residual effects of relationship and essentially ghost. Because in the story Mountain Boys, it just says that everyone's left with a ghost of everyone they've ever been with. And so when you deal with a person, you're not just dealing with them, you're dealing with them and the last 10 people they fucked, the last 10 people they've been with. And so there's that line of just there can be 100 between two men, there can be 100 ghosts in the room. How many chambers are there in the heart? How many do you want there to be, or how many do there need to be? It's also funny, coming to the Bay Area so young, and the particular tribe of queers I hung out in, how we lived a life that was so far beyond non-monogamy, actually clocking, boyfriend in this traditional sense. Who is gonna live together in an apartment and share a bank account? Of course, none of us. And when you don't have that kind of economic reality, it becomes really, really blurred. And also, you never just living that kind of life, you never really know where help is coming from, emotionally, economically, any of that stuff. So essentially, a boyfriend is anybody you have to do a bunch of emotional labor for, Some of my best boyfriends in the world have been just straight boys I lived with, who I knew I could count on before anybody I was fucking at the bathhouse, or even some of like my best girlfriends, or it's like just kind of like I like this roving sense of just how we have deep interactions with people that sit well beyond the realms of platonic friendship all the time, sometimes sexual, sometimes not.
Good answer. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Josiah, who is going to field some of the questions from the audience.
Oh my God. I hate to even be the person to interrupt this conversation. Y'all should just have a channel going between the two of you forever.
You need to
You
keep
believe
growing
this-
that beautiful ass hair forever, okay? Like I'm like, yeah, this is a good hair group. I feel inadequate. Like-
Oh man. Well, you know what? This conversation was so pinche enthralling. None of these well-behaved folks actually posted a question. Can I reprimand them for a moment, Brontez? I know it's your reading, but y'all, you have a chance to ask Brontez anything you want, and nobody says anything. I'm deeply shocked. I am shocked. This is a well-behaved. Could it really be an uncurious group? I have a question, Brontez. What? Wait, someone told me your band actually played at the bookstore once. This is a off. You did? When was that?
I want to say this was like 2018. Like we played a show in City Lights. Yeah, that was rad.
Oh my God. What was it for? Was it for a book release or?
It was for Since I Laid My Burden Down.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's dope. That's so dope.
I always kick it with y'all.
Oh man, always. And when so you say you almost said this beautiful creation to City Lights. You gonna send the next one to us or what?
I'm down. I'll party with y'all. Yeah, for life.
Oh man.
Who needs an advance?
Tate wants to know, when is the book on Tate coming out? That's a good question, Tate. Damn.
Sometime like later this year.
Okay.
Are you do you know if you're doing the recording? Are you going to read it?
I'm doing the recording. I did my last 3 books I did with Audible.
It's always weird reading about sex when you're like going deep. I don't know. I always feel bad for the engineer when I record my audiobooks. I'm like, am I going to get like Me Too'd or like this guy's just trying to come to work? Like it's a Monday at 11 and there's like dicks flying, clits, more than they bargained for.
Oh my God.
So
okay, well, I asked you a question, Brontez, in the chat. Fuck, marry, kill. Number 19, the white boy with dreadlocks. Number 100, the agent or roadie lover boy.
Kill the white boy with dreadlocks. Fuck the roadie boy. Marry the agent. Marry the agent. That was real. I'm glad. It's so fucking rare that I get a concise question that I can answer concisely. So yeah, I knew that real quick.
Claire asked, what are you working on now?
I'm doing this sci-fi novel. It's called The Body Writes a Book, and it's about this rural family of Black psychics in the 60s who are all at war with one another.
Oh, yes.
How's it going? How are you feeling? Like, are you in it? Are you deep in it?
Yeah, I'm like pretty deep in it. I actually got stoned and lost 3 chapters of it yesterday. But I'm not worried about it because I'm like, every time I'm typing it, I'm just like, oh my God, is this how Octavia Butler felt? And I'm like, no, she was way more sober and smarter at it. So we'll just see how it happens.
Like Octavia auto-saved.
Or typed on a typewriter and didn't even have to worry about that bullshit. Like, I kind of like, I'm back to writing in journals again because I can't, like, computers, like, it's rough.
It's a lot of chapters.
Jackson Howard's got a good question. Brontez, he wants to know, how did the ancestors help you write?
Like in my dreams, in my sleep, I like to think that they're both like kissing me softly and also reprimanding me. But I don't know. It's when I feel like here I sit and like just feel like it's hard to trace all the lineages that are happening.
Mm.
I really do feel like I come from like 100 lineages, you know what I'm saying? Like, because when I feel like it, I can be like, yeah, like, there's no way I can't look to like the niggerati. I can't look at like, I don't know, white girls making queer zines on the West Coast in the 90s. Like, that was kind of my Bible. Like, who amongst us didn't grow up with the Beats as like the influence, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know, like there's kind of like there's like 100 voices in my head that go, you know. I think essentially when I look at writing ancestors, I'm like, these are the people who are giving me permission to experiment with form in any kind of way like I want to. It's funny how many, you know, when they bump heads too, like when two of your ancestors are really bumping heads over something, like that's when the good writing is happening, I think.
And then Kevin's asking if, speaking of reprimanding, have you had folks in the lit industry try to police you, your queerness, your directness?
I mean, no, I think people who would like want to police something like that, they just look at the whole of it and just be like, fuck. Like they just know that nothing, you know what I'm saying? It's like an environmental, like, you know, person walking up to a vat of like toxic waste and being just like, I can't really solve this problem. I think I'll just move along. So it's like, yeah, like you really, it's a full-time job to police me. Many have tried, plenty have folded. So
They've fallen in the Call of Duty. They can't handle.
I can't even police myself. So it's just like, why should anyone else bother? Ugh.
I've never had anyone in the industry that I can think of, but I've definitely like, I remember there was like on Twitter, you know, where it's like pro cops, like the Twitter's just very copy, you know, like it's very like, I don't know, like everyone's into like up in each other's shit. So somebody was saying they were mad that I like always want a dick, or like my characters always want, like women always want dicks in my books. Like they thought that was very like, and I was like a woman can have a dick. A woman can want a dick. Like, why is that? You know, so that was, and then I sort of like, I took them aside in the DM and like explained where I was coming from. Cause you know, I didn't want to do it publicly. And like, it seemed like it was going to get out of hand. Like that, but then it very much softened. I just try to befriend. I try to like befriend in the DMs when it seems like it's going to get out of hand.
I do too, but I'm also like, if you don't want characters that want dick, then go read a motherfucking Robert Frost poem and leave me the fuck alone. You know what I'm saying?
They wanted to have a dick, and like she don't know, she wasn't happy.
Oh, like that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Again, if you don't want to read that, go read a Robert. No, I am so afraid to talk to people these days. I really recently just had this like crazy battle with like this fucking crazy person who I gave them my number to like talk, but then like 10 seconds into the conversation, I realized there was nothing in the world that was gonna help this. But what was funny is I actually don't have a Twitter at all. And this like crazy person that was getting ready to ruin my life, like they kept being like, well, you know, Brontez, like, why don't you like have a Twitter? Like you should have a Twitter. Like you're a writer, you should have a Twitter. I'm like, I don't want y'all finding me. Like, hell no. Like, look, I'm gonna stay on Facebook, where I can be as fucked up as I want and no one's there anymore because it's all old people. Yeah, that's my view to the world. So
they're like, why don't you want to get in the lion's den? Like, I'm in the lion's den, come in here. And you're like, hell no. That's smart.
I like miss the whole Twitter boat. I wish I had been like more savvy about it, but it's just so hard.
It's lost. It's there. It used to, I think, have a renegade. There was like renegade qualities, like the old Wild West of the internet, you know, which is now, you know, no longer. But I like that you're on Facebook. That's fucking weird.
The what?
I like that you're on Facebook. Do you play like Farmville?
I still love it. It's like my favorite. Like I'm
That's so weird.
I literally like it. Like it's like I feel like it's like the Reader's Digest of social media at this point. Just like so pointless, and it's just like I still get so much cathartic joy out of doing nothing and just like scrolling through Facebook. And now that you can't curse on there, I love it even more. It's like fucking. It's like I don't know. It's really like it's great. I only go to I will slip into Twitter when I want to see all the porn that got banned from Tumblr, but that's the only way in which I use Twitter.
It's very sad what happened to Tumblr. It was a devastation, actually.
These hoes get so mad when they're like, we can't show our vaginas and penises anymore. Where I'm just like, yo, there are so many places on the internet where you can like just go and just have a field day with it. I'm like, I never quite understand.
But Tumblr, I do feel like was particularly, it was decimated. At least my weird communities on there got decimated. Okay, wait, there's another question. Someone said, I think you said earlier that despite the gig economy necessity of being multidisciplinary, the movement between disciplines makes your work better. I was just curious to hear more about how, and how does working with film, prose poetry, and prose shape your work across the iterations of the 100 Boyfriends project?
I think the main thing with 100 Boyfriends is I definitely think it's written with like a theater IQ. Like well, I paid $64,000 for a theater degree, and so like there's this way in which kind of like it kind of sculpts a language, or like kind of like a personal like language. And I remember even when I first started studying dance, like you go to like a ballet class and they'll like want you to stand in releve, but they don't say that. They say shit like press toes to go up, and you're just like, what the fuck are they talking about? But then one day your body finally does it, and you're like, oh, this is why they use this language to achieve this effect, because it's a lot of counterintuitive stuff that can only be interpreted if said a certain way. Do you know what I mean? Then like you go, when I was like at UC Berkeley for my art practice like degree or whatever, like trying to wrap your mind around a sculptural piece, you know, like you have to do this sculpture piece for like this one. It's like a bunch of shit they make you do that you're usually not used to. And so approaching something that you absolutely have no clue about, but then having to make it and explain why, the whys and hows of how you make it, you learn the language around structure, right? And so it's kind of, I don't know, I think good writing is a balance between the physical and the mental, you know, because like honestly, like since quarantine, like sitting here all the time, it's literally harder to write in this way, because I feel like most of my best thoughts come within movement. It's when I'm walking to the train, it's when I go for that cup of coffee on my break, you know, it's when I'm like in this kind of repetitive mode. And it kind of changes things when your body doesn't have access like kind of to it. So I just think I don't know, what you're really just doing is putting like kind of experience into your body, or like this tactile experience into your body that kind of floats through consciousness and becomes, you know, like a better way to speak or a better way to explain.
I feel like this is the after party.
Yeah, my stepdad was an asshole.
Okay, well, I've got one more. I had another fuck, marry, kill. You seem to like it. It seemed to be, you know, it's nice when there's easy answers in life. Okay, so coworkers, and these are all boyfriends from the book. Coworkers, friend's husband, number 77, the chef, or Patagonia fancy bike boy.
Okay. Kill the chef. Who was the first one?
The coworker's friend's husband, Sean's husband.
Oh no, kill the husband, fuck the chef, marry the Patagonia bike boy.
That was one of my favorite stories, was the coworker's friend husband story. It was great. You should all buy the book so you can read that phenomenal story. Okay, there's another question from Liz Ash. You're so prolific. Do you procrastinate? Do you cheat on one project with another? What's your tactic to keep making?
I think you just wake up and do a little bit every day, and then shit just eventually rolls out. Like, they're like, cause I don't know, I put out this EP, right? And like so many of my friends are just like, how do you do it? It's like you just like roll out with these things all the time. But in my head, I'm just like, I wrote these songs in like 2016. And like this, what you're hearing is actually the second or third demo process. So it's just like, I don't know, like I stay bored a lot. And like I have a really intense problem with boredom. So I'm just like a busybody by nature. So I'm kind of like in the back of my head, I'm constantly sketching these things, but these projects like kind of take like years at a time. And so I think it became this IQ of like when I was working at this diner called Sparky's, and I was like, what do I want to be known for? Because I'm like, I go here every day, and I'm a waitress every day, and I can do this for 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 years, but no one's really going to give me a piece of paper for it. So that was the impetus to like kind of go to school, because I like that they give you a piece of paper just saying that you did something. And so then I feel like art becomes these continual kind of like progressive self-generated diplomas, which also at this point, I've done so many drugs. I mostly use it to mark time, because like I don't have kids or any real responsibilities. So when I look at a record or I look at a book, I can finally, my life doesn't feel so blurry anymore. I can actually put it into concise blocks. Like, oh, since I laid my burden down, oh, I was living on that street, I was fucking that dude, I was working on that record, oh, 100 boyfriends, oh, I started it here, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they're like kind of like these weird, like, time capsules.
So everybody friend Brontez on Facebook if you haven't already, so you can keep up with all the projects.
I do more host shit on Instagram, honestly.
Oh, you're on, okay, so you're on Instagram too.
Yeah.
It gets how we.
Yeah, I like.
What's your Instagram?
Brontez Purnell.
It's tough. Okay. I fucking hate Instagram. Everyone's so happy. I'm like, nobody's this happy. Everyone's so happy on there.
It's kind of, no, it's like, it's a total lie. It's like, just like, and everyone, like, there was a while where everyone was like at the beach or on a yacht. And I was like, I didn't even know that this many people lived coastally to even like, what the fuck is going on? Like smiling and shit with like champagne. I'm just like, I've lived in the Bay Area damn near 20 years. And I feel like I've like ridden on the Bay maybe 8 times. I didn't understand these photos. Like,
yeah, no, it's like there's enough people to compare yourself to. Like, I don't need to see any more good eyebrows for like the rest of my life. You know what I'm saying? It's like enough is enough already. Yachts, good eyebrows, like enough. But well, does anyone have any last question?
No more questions? We have to end this? This is such beautiful, really? Oh man, we all, familia, everyone for sticking around. Please give it up one more time. Give them some jazz hands to Melissa Broder and the one and only Brontez Purnell for being with us this hour. For what a beautiful conversation y'all had, man. I want like a regular channel with the two of you just talking. I want more stories about Sparky's too, Brontez. I know you're working at Sparky's. Man, that's some San Francisco roots right there.
There's some diner stories, maybe inspired. Maybe they're in this book. I don't know if it's Sparky's inspiration, but there's some diner in this book. This book goes heavy on the diner. So if you love a diner, you're gonna love this book.
I was over at Baghdad Cafe, Brontez, working the 10 to 6 a.m. shift back then. So we was across town from each other. Man, y'all, this has been, oh, wow. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And please, if you haven't already, come on, 100 Boyfriends. get this now. And also Milk Fed. Melissa, your book is downstairs in the new releases section. So I'm gonna tap in with that. And if you all haven't checked out Melissa's
Has a
book yet,
boob.
Milk Fed,
There's a
get that
boob on
book.
it.
Get that book, move on it. We got it in the store too. And keep your eyes out for her selected poems coming out in the summer too.